The Secrets of Technology is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Technology, where we discuss the technology news that's important to you from a uniquely Catholic point of view. And joining me today is Thomas Sanjurjo. Hey, Thomas.
Hey, Dom.
Before we get into today's show, I want to actually a programming note. We will not have an episode next week because I won't be here on the day of release. So we could record it, but I wouldn't be able to edit it. So I'm actually heading to Steubenville with my daughter for a college visit. So anybody that's in the Steubenville area that wants to have a meetup, I'm free on Saturday while she hangs out with her friends. So I'm going back to my alma mater. I went to Steubenville more decades ago than I care to recount, and happy to be going back. But in any case, we won't have an episode next week, but we'll be back the following week. And again, before we get into the discussion, I want to tell you about another show on the StarQuest Network that I'm sure you'll enjoy called Pray Station Portable. It's the Divine Liturgy, the Hours, the Divine Office, not the Divine Liturgy. That's a whole different thing. The Divine Office, the Liturgy of the Hours, mixing those up. And it's a way of praying. That's the church's daily prayer. And you should check out Pray Station Portable. It's one of the oldest Catholic podcasts out there. It's been going for more than 20 years now, which is amazing. All right, let's get into today's topic. This article caught my attention. It's from CatholicCulture.org, and it was written by Dr. Jeff Myris. Full disclosure, I worked for Catholic World News 20-something years ago. It was the first online Catholic news service, which is now part of Catholic Culture. And so I'm friends with and know the folks there. But Jeff's article is titled On Hacking Planned Parenthood. He talks about a news item where apparently some ransomware hackers hacked into the Planned Parenthood's computer systems, stole 93 gigabytes of data, and was, threatened, blackmailing them to pay them a bunch of money or they'd release all this information into the wild. And it started some thinking on Jeff's part about hacking and whether, ethical hacking. And we know that there's a couple different kinds of hacking. There's white hat hacking and black hat hacking. White hat is the sort where you're testing security, usually in order to make sure it's secure, in order to take something that isn't yours that you shouldn't have access to, but to test it to make sure it's secure. Black hat is I'm doing something nefarious. I'm breaking in either like a joyride or to mess things up or to blackmail or to steal or whatever bad thing you're trying to do is. And so Jeff, asked the question, is it moral? Would it be moral to hack into an abortion provider's computers, grab the information stored there, publicize the breach, and release the acquired information into the wild in an attempt to discredit the organization effectively enough that it saves lives, the lives of children who would be aborted otherwise? And he says yes. But I'm curious, Thomas, what do you say?
He misses an option here. and I want to be clear about hacking because it's always a really interesting conversation, especially when you get into the concepts of what ethical hacking is and what it means. The two sides of it are there's a white hat set of hackers, which is the team that is designed to go in and try and break into things. And this is a whole range of skill sets, actually. It goes from actual physical penetration testing, trying to get into a building to get to the servers. Some of the stories from these guys are amazing, where they will actually walk in and put a server on a cart and walk out with the server the physical object, and it's they were hired to hack the space, but weren't thought of in that physical way. So that's a really cool aspect of it. But they try all different ways to access information that they shouldn't have access to, but they're hired to do it. And that's the key to a white hat hacker, is that you've been instructed specifically to do this thing. The other side is the black hat hacker, who does it nefariously without any permissions and goes in and actually retrieves information. And in between the two, there's this really kind of interesting space that I used to play around in. It's gray hat hacking, where it's kiddie scripting. It's non-professional hacking, where you go in and you are just testing things on the internet. You're just kind of poking at things and figuring out what's there. And every once in a while, you'll stumble onto something where you'll go to a website that you weren't expecting to find a vulnerability. You were just kind of testing what's there, and you find the vulnerability. And that's what he actually describes in the article as not what happened to Planned Parenthood, but what had happened to him previously was this thing where someone had found a vulnerability, explained that there was a vulnerability, and then asked for some cash. And that's how the gray hat hacking works, is that you find a vulnerability, you let the people know that it's there, but for your expertise in telling how you performed the hack, you have to, you're going to explain it to them, but they need to pay you for that. And you're not going to give it to them for free.
It's a bounty.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, and there are websites that are completely dedicated to this, that are completely dedicated to finding bugs. Google actually does pay out on these kind of things. If you can find bugs in Google or hacks in Google, they will pay out. You have to be careful about it, and you have to be really particular about how you're taking notes of what you've done and making sure that you're following certain sets of rules that they have about what you do download. So you have to be able to prove that you got in, but you can't keep anything that you got in. Otherwise, that becomes a black hat hacking situation, and you're in a lot of trouble. So it's a really interesting boundary in between those two. My big issue here is I feel very, very strongly that this is a highly illegal thing that is going to harm more people than it's going to help. And in this case, one of the paragraphs that really, and I am the first guy that's going to tell you, if the law tells you not to do something moral, do the moral thing anyway. And in this case, though, I feel like it takes that step too far, where it's gone to the boundary of, well, the law prevents me from doing anything about this, so I'm going to take matters into my own hands. So it almost goes into that vigilante realm. And that's what really bothered me. There's one paragraph where he says it's perfectly clear that when the actions in question are protected by law and government, that means of combating such evils will often violate the law. And that bothers me, because it's almost like you're specifically violating the law instead of trying to get the law changed and do what you can to, affect a real permanent change rather than just kind of a temporary against what the current situation is.
Right, because the moral principle is, when a law is unjust, then you have no obligation to obey the law. That is the principle of civil disobedience. But no one is saying that the law against hacking computers is unjust.
Exactly.
That is a just law. So it doesn't automatically become moral because the object of the hacking is someone doing something immoral. I mean, if it were, let me kind of propose a what if to you. If it were the mob that you were hacking, as opposed to Planned Parenthood, would it make it any better?
In my opinion,
aside from the fact that if the mob catches you, you don't get lawyers sick on you. You get veto.
Yeah, in my opinion, no, especially not without a writ of someone telling you that this is what you should be doing. So, if you're an FBI hacker and that's your job, right? That's a very different situation. And in this, though, there's no writ, there's no organization standing behind you saying this is the thing. Now, if there's a Catholic hacking organization that, the Vatican has a secret hacking thing going on, I'm open. I'm just saying.
Wait. Time out. We got to cut this episode because I've got a script in mind. That would be a great movie.
That would be. It would be really cool. And and there are plenty of areas where this kind of thing can be done for justice. It's funny too because like he mentions that he had an experience with hackers previously. When I was working at the parish, we had someone hack our website because I'm not sure how they ended up getting confused about this, but they confused us with a website that had that promoted dolphin poaching or something like that. It was this just really weird situation. And so I got in touch with the people and was like, and actually managed to contact them on social media and worked it out with them. And they were surprised that I was as chill about it as I was. But they did wreck our site for a few days. And but they were doing it for a kind of social justice reason. They were doing it for a reason that they felt was valuable. But this is the problem, right? Is that you don't necessarily know if the thing you're doing is going to affect a change or if it's going to damage, if there's going to be some kind of collateral damage with what you end up doing that you're unaware of. And there's reasons that these things are illegal. There's reasons that we provide these protections for everyone equally. Mm-hmm. And the retaliation on this kind of thing too is the other thing that I would really worry about. If a lot of conservative groups or religious groups started doing this regularly, there's going to be a backlash. And I can promise you that a large majority of the hacking community is not on that same conservative and religious bent.
And let me tell you, a lot of pro-life groups, even state level ones, are really bad when it comes to technology security. Yeah, I have experience with one in particular. It's many years now since this, but I mean their cybersecurity practices were abysmal, and I kept telling them, you are setting yourself, if we don't fix this, and we fixed this while I was there, but I was telling them, if we don't fix, I'll tell you what they did. They had an open Wi-Fi network in an office building, so anybody can get on the network. They had a file server. It was just a PC with an open file, so anybody who got on the Wi-Fi could access the file server, the common file server, every folder. And in one of those folders was a Word doc with all of the passwords to all of the accounts. I think I discovered that my first week there, and I flipped out. Mm-hmm.
As you should.
Yeah. Trying to explain to the 80-year-old president of this organization why this is a bad idea. She had she couldn't understand me. Like, why? And I'm like, did not the 25-year-old kid who used to work here, who went to go work for big conservative organization, did he not know this? It just so, which is to say that we are as vulnerable to this, we collectively, the people who think like we do, say, as those we would oppose, and probably even more so, because Planned Parenthood has many more resources, financial and otherwise, and political, than their opponents do. That's just a fact. So be careful getting into an underground war where you're not protected. Right. Never mind the fact that they could also marshal the forces of the law against you as well.
Which is definitely the much more likely situation, because it's very easy, especially with Planned Parenthood. You're going to be on the bad side of HIPAA laws, and that is not good. That will, and I understand what he was trying to say. He's building this argument where we're not doing it for money. We're doing it for the protection of people. We're trying to discredit these organizations. But as soon as you take a record from a clinic and release it publicly, you have violated so many HIPAA laws. And they are not going to let you get away with that. Yeah, federal HIPAA laws.
Speaking of which, the FBI will come down on you really hard. Probably as a racketeering thing. They'll treat you like organized crime. I mean, I don't know that Jeff was, to give him the benefit of the doubt, I don't think he was suggesting that we should do this. And in fact, he says, later on, talks about, it could be a type of martyrdom where you are going to be arrested and thrown in jail for this, but if you've accomplished something good, it's a little bit of an end justifying the means argument.
Yeah.
But, you know, I don't think, so I don't think he was necessarily suggesting it. I think it was more of a thought experiment. Is it something that someone should do? And I kind of come down on that. I think we should use every legitimate means possible, because what's the difference between this and, say, firebombing? Don't do this. I'm not suggesting this. But what would be the difference between this and firebombing clinics? Like, is at night when no one's around, you know what I mean? So, like, you're not injuring any persons.
Right.
But you're doing this because if we can stop these clinics at any cost, we will save babies' lives. There are people who believe this, and I don't want them to do this. I'm saying, so I'm not sure that there is a moral difference. There's a difference in degree of damage and dangerousness, but I don't know that there's a moral difference. I'm willing to have people offer up different opinions on this, and if the people in the audience would have different opinions, I'd love to hear them and see what you have to say about it. But I think I'm with you. I don't think this is something we should do. I don't think this sort of ethical hacking. Are there instances, though, where it would be permissible morally to do some of this gray, black hat, let's say just even black hat hacking of organizations or people doing evil?
I think it really comes back to the needing a structure behind it, right? And an independent hacking organization is not a structure in this sense of the term, right? Yeah. Exactly. Like if you were, because essentially I can assure you that there are people in our government who do this on the regular. This is part of their job. I can assure you almost certainly that there are Catholic people who are in those roles. I would be hard pressed to imagine a world in which there wasn't at least one Catholic hacker working for the U.S. government.
Right. The NSA, the U.S. Cyber Command, something like that. Yeah,
exactly. And so I feel like that, to me, is morally permissible. It's an illegal thing. It's outside of the bounds of normal legal interaction online, but it's sanctioned by a system that has protections in place against rogue malfeasance, against that has some level of check and balance to it. And if you just start up your own organization, you kind of miss in that point.
I would say that government hackers they're not doing illegal hacking by and large. I think
that's true. Yeah.
The legality is the question is legal under what system of laws?
Right.
American laws, the laws of, say, nation states that are our enemies, certainly illegal in those countries. To hack them. But so it's a little bit of a question of which laws we're talking about in that particular case. But you're right. Like if you are like I say, like a privateer, you've been given a letter of marque to do ethical hacking or do black hat hacking on the bad guys from a legitimate moral authority. That would probably be different, but
that changes the tenor of the conversation, in my opinion. And again, if there's like the secret
at the Vatican,
right. If there's a secret Vatican organization, I'm here. I'm around.
So someone paged Dan Brown. So I think that's very interesting, and I'd say, like, reading this, I thought this is at the heart of Catholic and technology. This is something that's right in our wheelhouse, and something that we really need to think about our actions when we are engaged in this sort of behavior and the temptation to do things that we think are justified. Sometimes we need to step back and think about it from a different perspective. So good. Very good. All right. So before we move on, I do want to take a moment now to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the Secrets of Technology, including William W., Melanie L., Josiah N., Aaron M., and Joseph S. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Technology and all the shows at StarQuest. And you can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. So we have several more headlines I'd like to talk about this time. And our first one comes from The Verge. And the headline is, Reddit is making site-wide protests basically impossible. So Reddit has a new policy that requires moderator requests for changes to the community type to be approved at a higher level. So a moderator, so you have subreddits, which are sub-communities within Reddit, usually organized around particular interests, and the moderator runs that community. And a moderator can change the community to make it private or labeled NSFW, not safe for work, which is not, well, it was happening last year as part of a protest against Reddit's new API pricing for the use of the private application interface that some very popular Reddit software was using, third-party Reddit software was using. And so a lot of communities went private or went NSFW, which basically shut them down as a way of protesting against this policy. And so Reddit's saying, you can't do that anymore. We control, you have to ask us to do that. You don't have the absolute control of that. What do you think of this, Thomas, and what this means for Reddit?
There are so few places left on the internet that are truly owned by the people that are on them anymore. In Reddit's actually, if you don't know the history of Reddit as a community, it's kind of hard to dig into this. But Reddit, for the longest time, has been a really open forum. It's been very much community owned. It wasn't until recently, when Reddit actually went public with their IPO, that a lot of this started changing. And so one of the things that I think any company that goes public suffers from is, everything was great when we were being funded, but now we have to actually make money for ourselves. How do we do that? How do we return value to these stockholders? And so they started doing little things. And the one that really, I think, hit especially the moderators. And so this is something that if you're a regular day-to-day user of Reddit, that doesn't affect you as much. But the moderators used a lot of mod tools to be able to interact with all of the different subs that they had to moderate. And it's a very big mark to be a moderator on a subreddit. Like that's a huge deal. It's something that you can tell people later, and if they've ever been a mod on Reddit, it automatically gives you a lot of credit with them, because it's a lot of work, and and you have to be very mature about it. You have to know how to deal with people that are really upset with you on a regular basis,
which they're all doing for free.
Exactly. Yeah. This is not a paid position at all. This is out of loving the community that they're involved in. They're there dealing with all of the junk to keep it the community that they love. And once Reddit decided to make this API shift, they realized that there was a lot of money to be gained there, and they thought it was only going to affect kind of the providers, so the downstream apps that were connecting via these APIs. And I don't know who thought it was a good idea to do this, but they didn't think about the fact that those apps were then going to have to charge people to use the app, because they were having to pay for access to the API. So yeah, it was not well thought out. But instead of kind of trying to work with the community, especially the really heavily engaged community, I feel like Reddit did double down on it and just said, no, this is the way that things are going to happen. You just deal with it. And then once the mods, who are the workhorses of Reddit, decided we'd had enough and went in and, started shifting the way that they use the communities, Reddit said, you can't do that. And it kind of breaks the feel of Reddit, where your sub is your sub, and like the community that you have is your community, and you make the rules as a community. If you have to keep going back to Reddit and asking permission for it, then it's not really your community anymore. It's Reddit's community that you're working for free. And that definitely changes the way that Reddit feels. And it's changed a lot of the way that Reddit works too. I've been on Reddit for a long while, and while I love it, I still love it. Still think it's a great platform. There are a lot of communities that I'm in that are suffering for mods leaving because they don't want to work for Reddit for free.
That's the thing that sort of they cut off their nose to spite their face in a sense, because, they basically told these mods, we don't value your contribution enough. Like, you are, we're taking you for granted. They took them for granted that these people would continue. Pointing out, so the NSFW designation, if you turn your site to that, it's not because they want to start posting adult content. It makes that subreddit ineligible for advertising because advertisers don't want to advertise in places where there's, that sort of content, let's just say. Yeah. So that lost money for Reddit. And the fun thing is, the infuriating thing is when they did this API pricing change, I think it was in order to prevent these third-party reading tools, because there was a couple of tools that were just good for regular users of Reddit, not just the mods, where you could get all your communities, look at all your messages, do it all in these apps. But that meant you weren't on the Reddit site looking at their ads. This is the same thing Twitter did when they killed all of their APIs for third-party apps back in the day. It means, that you have to go and look at their ads, and you can't use the site in the way that works for you because their site is unwieldy. It's huge and it's covered in ads. It reminds me a bit of another site that is all user-generated content that has gone commercial and taking it for granted, which is fandom.com. So Fandom is a wiki site where fans of particular franchises or shows will set up a wiki all about the show. And fans, how we are on these StarQuest, we're obsessive about our shows. We love our shows. And I use these fandom wikis all the time because they're all the details about every episode, plot summaries, actors, everything, transcripts of the scripts and all that sort of stuff. And what happened was Fandom was purchased. The whole fandom.com was purchased, and they started. There was a McDonald's wiki. They're fans of McDonald's, and they went in and with McDonald's paid for a promotion and went in and changed the page. I think it was for Grimace, the character Grimace, to this promotion for a Grimace shake, a purple shake, and just throughout all of the many hours of work that one particular editor had done on this page, and just threw it out and replaced it with an ad. And if people freaked out because, hey, this is our site, and they said, no, it's not. You've just been working for us for free. Essentially, is what they said. Yeah.
Well, but that's what they said. That is exactly what they said. It's not even essentially what they said. They took this labor and said, yep, it's ours now. And it's so tough because the internet is a thing because people contribute to it. And there are so many places that are getting wrapped in fences and claimed ownership of, that have been worked on, that have been developed and built. And the one that really is the sand in my toes on the on the Reddit thing is the fact that they have made it so that they can take a community away from the mods and just replace them. And what you end up with there, it is a temporary mod who doesn't know the community, doesn't know anything about the people that have made the community what it is, doesn't know the temperature of the group that's underlying it, but is charged with keeping it going until more mods can be found. And it's basically just keep it going until you can gather some more slaves from the people that want this community to keep running. And that's it. That's the model that they're running with. Mm-hmm. That really upsets me.
I get servers cost money. Bandwidth is expensive. All of this stuff, it costs money to run these huge websites, cost millions of dollars a year. They need income. And we get to use them essentially for free, right? I don't pay Facebook any money. I don't pay Reddit any money. We get it for free. So I'm okay with some level of monetization. If I have to watch ads on my Facebook stream or in my subreddit within reason that are relevant to me and that are not distracting me from the content, I'm okay with that. There's a sort of a compact between the users and the company. I'll put up the certain amount of ads as long as you keep providing the product, the place, the space for me, absent excessive control. And that balance gets out of kilter all the time. It's all I can't think of a single site these days that it isn't out of kilter, that it isn't basically tilted against the user. I mean, say what you will about Twitter and its issues. I feel like since Elon Musk took it over, it's really kind of in the hands of the users a lot more than it ever was, for good and for ill. Like, let me just be clear about that. It's for good and for ill. There's bad aspects of that as well. And so, but I think in general, I mean, I'm old enough to remember the news groups, right? Man, that was a Wild West.
Yeah.
And
that's the internet, though. That's like, that's one of the things that make the internet's weird.
Yes. Well, and
let's get back to it.
The news groups, how did they exist? They existed on, excess bandwidth and, the back servers with excess capacity at universities, pretty much. That's how they began. These universities' computers had excess power, excess space, that sort of thing. And it got to the point where all the ISPs were having to shuffle around gigabytes and gigabytes of data to keep these news groups going. And they started saying, we can't do this. We're getting rid of news groups. That whole thing went away. And so other things, I think that's kind of actually about the time Reddit came around, that and others like it to kind of fill that space. But so I get it costs money, it costs resources to do things, but there's a way to do stuff. And some of the corporate, legal, lawyer, Wall Street ways of doing these things are detrimental not just to the users and their community, but to the company itself. Yeah. And I think that's really what it comes down to, is if they don't straighten up, Reddit will go away.
It will. And it's not, because I don't feel like it's an indispensable part of what I do. I use it a lot. I'm not going to lie. I am on Reddit a lot, but I don't feel like it's an indispensable part of what I do on a day-to-day basis. And I've already dropped Facebook. I've dropped Twitter. Reddit's not going to last long if it keeps it up.
And there are alternatives already. There are great, Discord has become a place where people go for things that are very similar to Reddit. And there could be others. There's no secret sauce in it. You know what I mean? Because again, when it comes down to it, what makes Reddit good are the people.
Right.
And if the people go somewhere else, that place will be good. I am convinced that the only thing that keeps Facebook in business is that there's no alternative.
Yeah.
Where everyone will go. Like I'm on Facebook still just because my family's there and a community of friends are there. But I frankly use it less and less over these days. I'm not nearly there. I don't post nearly as much as I used to. And, if everyone up and moves somewhere else, I'd go there. This is why our Discord server, StarQuest, sqpn.com/Discord, is a great place because it doesn't have any of this nonsense. So, moving on, now that topic is done, let's talk about another headline. This one is from Washington Post via msn.com. Your phone's 5G icon and signal bars are lying to you. I love the over-the-top dramatic headline.
Yes.
So basically what it says is, when you look at your phone and at the top it says 5G and you see bars, that is, you can't take that as an absolute guarantee that what you're actually on 5G, and those bars don't really represent anything. They're not a direct correlation to signal strength, to put it bluntly. There is no standard measure of, is that 3 bars is so much more signal strength than 2 bars or something like that. The article talks to some experts who basically say signal connection between your phone and the network is a very complex thing with many, many factors that go into how good the connection is. And it's all being boiled down into this very simple icon on your screen. So, and then they have some recommendations for so how should we behave when we're trying to get a better signal? But in general, what do you think of this in general?
I never trust that thing anyway. to be honest, I just, can I connect? Can I not connect? I don't know. It's going to be a guess. I try and look at maps before I go places a lot of times, where I'll just try and check, or if I can download like my offline maps for being able to travel.
Yes.
But yeah, I really don't trust the icons anymore. I've had full bars and very, very spotty signal, and had 1 bar and blazing fast download speeds before. So now, to be fair, I think that you can trust the 5G symbol if you are in a metropolitan area, typically, because you're close enough to some kind of transmitting system that you're going to be getting that connection.
Yes. If you see buildings more than 4 stories tall, you're probably in a 5G area. That's my shorthand.
Yeah, that's a pretty good one though. I like that, and it's and the other side of it too though is that just because you have a 5G network doesn't mean that you've got like the top speeds out of it, because it is kind of it's a little bit waffly in the way that it handles connections. And so you could be directly between 2 5G towers. 5G towers are a lot closer to you than the old 4G towers used to be, where they were spread out and really huge. The 5G towers can actually be kind of in the urban areas and on top of things and all around. So you could be between 2. If you've ever been between 2 routers in your house, or 2 access points in your house, and your phone gets flipped back and forth between them,
switching back and forth.
Yeah. Same kind of thing can happen. So, it's self-service.
Right.
It's not meant to be super reliable.
So, if you're ever out in a place and you don't have a good connection, they say, don't walk around like holding, looking for the bars to change on your phone as an indicator. But basically, if you're out in the woods, or out in a rural area, get out into an open area without cover, trees, even leaves can block signals. So, if in the winter, you'll probably have better signal than otherwise. Get up high, all that sort of stuff will work. I keep forgetting, honestly, the difference between 5G and LTE. And I'm like, wait, it says LTE. Is that good or bad? Oh, wait, that's the older one. I can never keep them straight. I mean, 4, 5, I get it. 5 is better than 4, 4G, 5G. But then they throw in stuff like LTE. I don't know. But I am Mint Mobile. And for me, the lower cost for the service is worth the spottier signal. It's at times when I get into more rural places. But yeah, I mean, I often end up actually getting if I know I'm going camping, I get a SIM card, like an eSIM that they'll do, the AT&T, like, it's a multi-network SIM. So it'll switch to whatever's strongest, wherever I'm at.
Right.
And I'll get like 5 gigs for the weekend for $5 or $10 or whatever it is, and be happy with it. But in general, I think people trust their phones a lot more than they should. Like they trust that their phones are telling them something.
Yeah.
Which is a little bit to the credit of the manufacturers that they've engendered this trust. They've put a really nice wrapper over something that is extremely complicated and so many factors go into it.
I don't know. Should we really get into talking about the battery icon as well at this point? Because that's lying to you as well. Just so everybody's clear.
Yes,
that is a best guess that the phone can come up with.
There's no way to measure that a battery has 54% of capacity versus 55. That is what it. Yeah, that's based on very complex calculations of voltage and things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And not even that. It's actually just uptime versus screen time. So they know that the screen takes a lot of power and that these other couple of things running take a lot of power. And so if those have been up a while, we'll knock a few more percentage points off of the. It is the most nebulous math you will ever find. But, it gets the job done. And for the most part, it's decently accurate.
I had an issue a few months ago where whatever piece of software in my iPhone displays the battery percentage got a cache messed up or something, and it was basically zero. It said my phone was nearly dead all the time, no matter how long I charged it. And I was kind of freaking out until I did some research and ended up blowing out the caches and restarting it, and it worked, which is great. I mean, it gives me that, but it's like, it was fine. The phone wasn't broken. It just was the software needed to be rebooted because it couldn't show me the right numbers. So your phone's lying, folks.
Don't rely on it quite as much, right?
Right. Certainly don't rely on it as life or death. Like I see so many people with their phones are like at 3% battery. And like, oh, it's still plenty. It's like they think of it like their car. If I have a quarter tank of gas, I've got so many miles. You may know that for your car. That's not how phones work.
Your phone doesn't even know that for itself.
Exactly. The phone doesn't even know if it has 3% or not. So it could die at any moment. All right. And that's probably the true for electric cars, too. Not actually, now that I think about it, that they don't know any better about their capacity.
Likely.
Yeah. All right. So our last headline is from Fortune magazine. It says bosses are firing Gen Z grads just months after hiring them. Here's what they say needs to change. And it's a long article, and it talks about some of the challenges that they're running into. It basically summarized lack of motivation and initiative. Half of the business leaders surveyed cited a lack of motivation or initiative among Gen Z hires, unprofessional behavior, unprofessional conduct. They don't know how to speak in the workplace. They don't know how to dress in the workplace. Disorganization, poor communication skills, inability to handle a workload, and so on. And now, to be clear, everybody comes out of college needing, some seasoning. You come out of college, you get your first job, and that's when you actually learn how to work in the office, usually. But what they're saying is Gen Z grads, especially in the last couple of years, and this year in particular, are even worse off. 6 in 10 employers surveyed have already fired Gen Z hires from earlier this year. 6 in 10. So, we can get into it, but what do you think, Thomas, about it?
It bothers me a lot that there is this secret handshake that is never taught to these kids. And, I have some Gen Zers in my house, and I'm doing my best to teach them the secret handshakes because it's difficult, but they've grown up in a world that doesn't have a format, and they're expected to know all of these things, but they're YouTube kids, they're people who didn't have to watch half-hour long TV shows. They had Netflix a majority of their formative years, and there weren't rules to these things, and they didn't see an office space being presented on any of these shows that they watched or any of the things that they were interested in, and so they don't know the secret code. And I feel like if you are a person who's been hiring Gen Z and you're firing them because they don't know office culture, you're not doing a good job as a boss setting them up for success. So I really do blame the hiring people here, not the Gen Zers.
If you're going to hire new grads, you've got to prepare them for the workplace. It's always been the case where young people come out of college and a lot of them aren't ready. I remember one of my high school friends, so this is going back a long time, who got his first job at a big financial firm, very prestigious, and he would call me and want me to help him write his reports because he didn't know how to write his reports.
Yeah.
And I was like, I was working this was after I'd flunked out basically of college, my first time going, and was working in a factory, and I'm like, I'm coming home greasy, grimy, and he's like, dude, can you come over and help me write my paper for this big financial services firm where I'm making this huge paycheck? And I'm like, this really isn't fair.
Yeah.
But I helped him because he was a friend. But you're right. And one of the other things that is potentially, causing this disruption for Gen Z is they're raised on a communication style that is completely different from prior generations. They don't even email. It's text. It's very informal. They are used to being informal with each other and with others, even other authority figures. I can imagine how hard it is when they get to the office. They encounter these Gen X and Boomer bosses who expect a certain kind of decorum and attitude that they're not getting from them.
Right.
I think the expectations in college have changed a lot, for one thing.
That's definitely true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like there's a lot there that is good. And there's a lot to embrace in it because they're very much more collaborative than any previous group. As a whole, I don't want to say each individual. So, if you get a Gen Z that's not collaborative, don't blame me because it's not. Everybody's their own thing. But I feel like they work together so much better. Like their whole concept of things is, who can I bring alongside myself to do this job? And that's a skill that's like, for me growing up, that was something you put on your resume because it was very impressive that if you knew how to gather a group of people and get them targeted on a task and working through it. And it's just kind of built into their DNA as from the generation that they come from. They work collectively. They think about that first. And so if you've gotten them into the workplace and you've assigned them a task to do individually, and they're going to look for help, and they're informally asking other people to, help them out, it's not because they're being disrespectful. It's not because they're being lazy. It's because that's the way they operate, And so you got to meet them where they are. And I think the really big trick here is, and this is kind of a neat, if anybody's interested in why I think this is really a generational thing that is worthwhile, Amber Case did this fantastic TED Talk. I think I've mentioned it before, but if I haven't, it's worth checking out. It's called "We Are All Cyborgs Now," and she talks through the fact that we all had the advantage of growing up. Us Gen Xers and that group had the advantage of growing up and going through our adolescence physically without anything happening online, and then we hit online and had to go through a second adolescence online. But we'd already done the first one. Gen Z didn't get that advantage. They had to do both at the same time. And they had to learn a lot from that and had to adjust very differently to the world that they were entering into because of that. So really great talk. I definitely encourage you to listen to it because it'll give you kind of an insight into how the world is changing and potentially why there is such a difference between the current graduating generations and the previous generations that graduated and what they were able to do.
Just so folks know, I'm pretty sure Gen Z is defined as people born between 96 and 2012, I think is when they're doing it now.
I think that's the range. Yeah.
And so 80 to 95 was millennial, 65 to 80 is Gen X, and so on and so forth. So one other thing that gets mentioned is, as a negative, is lack of motivation or initiative. And I think I know what this is, which is that Gen Z, by and large, values a work-life balance over the traditional notions of, career advancement. I encountered this myself, actually, at a job not long ago where I started working. I was newly married, newly a dad, and I think at one point my boss, we were having like evaluations or something. He asked me, what's the most important thing about this job? And I said, the most important thing about this job is that it gives me a paycheck to take care of my family.
Mm-hmm.
And he was kind of shocked by that because he thought I would say the most important thing about this job is the mission of the organization. And,
Right.
I'm like, no, my priorities are different. And it actually it changed my actual job. He put me in a different role and that sort of thing because he was looking for, he said he hires young people fresh out of college because they don't have families and they can devote more of their time to their job and they're much more career oriented. And that's not the same for this generation like it used to be. And that's probably good.
Yeah. Well, they've seen their parents burn out. They've seen their parents went through this extreme burnout, and midlife crisis is the kind of joke is that the midlife crisis is happening earlier to the Gen Zers because they saw it happen to their parents, they understood what's happening, and now they're like, I'm not doing that.
I don't want to get in that trap.
Yeah.
I mean, you see video after video on TikTok or Instagram, YouTube Shorts, various kinds of young people saying, I work 5 days a week, 8 to 12 hours a day, so that I can come home, eat, go to bed, and get up and do it again, and have a couple hours maybe on the weekend that I can enjoy myself. Why? Like what? I'm working to work. I'm living to work instead of working to live.
Exactly.
And I don't want to spend the next 40 years doing this. And you know what? They're not wrong. I mean, I work in a non-traditional role. I get my work-life balance is a whole lot better than it used to be. I don't spend 3 hours a day in a car driving to my job like I used to. I get to be with my family. So I kind of applaud that. Maybe in this particular case, the workplace needs to change, not the workers. So
I would be very highly inclined to agree with that. For sure.
Another factor I think that involved in this is to keep in mind that, especially for this year's grads, the class of 2024, they were the pandemic Zoom generation. They started college remote,
right?
Probably for almost their entire first year. I think for a lot of kids, their entire freshman year, and then for a lot of them, they ended remote because of all of the campus protests and stuff like that last year. So, they didn't get the traditional 4 years of college that a lot of previous generations of graduates did too. So that's another thing that kind of held them back, set them back a little bit with getting ready for adult work life. So something else to keep in mind. All right. So those are our headlines. And now it's time to move on to our picks of the week. And Thomas, why don't you go first? What is your pick this week?
Alrighty, so we're doing fantasy football at my house, and I have, my love for Google Sheets, so I decided I was going to go through and really dig into it, and I found a great reference site. Really want to applaud these guys. They do have a paid function, so if you really want to dive deep into the APIs and get really involved in it, they have a whole stat head website that they got multiple different sports on. One of their main missions is trying to get sports that are really underserved out and exposed. So they have a lot of stats. But this is this one that I'm using for football is called profootballreference.com. And if you go there, they have the stats updated really regularly. I was actually kind of like upset because we were trying to build our teams for this next week. I'm the manager for our football league, and we were trying to build our teams for this last week, and I was running behind, so I jumped on and tried to grab the stats like the very, very morning of after one of the games had happened, because there was some discussion about it. And they didn't get the stats posted until 10 a.m. as opposed to their normal 8:30 that I'm used to. And I was like, oh man, I missed the opportunity to do that. But they're really great. The stats are really deep. They have a fantasy section. So if you're really into fantasy football, they kind of have a layout of who's doing the best fantasy wise for the year. just lots of really fantastic information. If I had one quibble, it would be that I can't get an injured reserve list easily for the teams so that I know who's on injured reserve. But other than that, everything's fantastic. And it's all exportable. It's all available in CSV format, or you can link directly to the table. So if you're using Google Sheets, you can just put an import link into the Google Sheets and it imports the whole table for you. And then you can just build off of that table. So yeah, highly recommend them. ProFootballReference.com and all of their other sister sites that they have.
Baseball, college football, basketball, both college and NBA, hockey. Yeah, pretty much you name it. This is another one of those things, like it probably started as some just fans obsessively posting their stuff online, and it's become a business for them. But it's different because they're the owners of their site, probably,
right?
I assume, as opposed to somebody else owning their work. That's awesome. So my pick this week is a simple, straightforward, and very useful app called Serenity. Like every time I see it, I think of George Costanza's dad. Serenity now. So Serenity is a small app that does the one thing, which is to mute apps that beep and throw up notifications and whatnot, so that they're not distracting you. So, for example, Slack, Zoom, Discord, Teams. I can't tell you how often I'm sitting here working before I use Serenity, and someone would beep, and I'm like, "Who beeped? Like, what was that beep for? Why is it beeping at me? Is that Discord? Did I get a message? Is it this? Is it that?" So this one allows you to. It gives you a menu in your menu bar. This is a Mac app. Is your menu in the menu bar, and you just select which apps you want to silence. I need to make sure I get my Slack and Zoom messages, but I don't want to hear from Teams or whatever, or in Discord for now. And so that's it. Very simple. And I should mention it is available in SetApp. So everybody drink. But so you can get it for free on SetApp, or you can pay for it otherwise. So yeah, it's. See, I'm just trying to see what I've got in Serenity at the moment.
That's a good one. I would like that for Android. I'm gonna go find an Android equivalent of that one.
Yeah, actually, yeah, that would be on other platforms. Like I'd like to. I wish you could do it on iOS for sure. Although I don't get. All the notifications on iOS go through the notification system, the Apple's system, and you can turn things off there. It's a lot more granular, and you can set focus modes. So and you can set focus modes on the Mac too. But I don't know. It just having this system is much. It's I'm looking at it now, and I'm going, I should turn those off. So it gives you certain categories: total serenity. Or you could have it just mute notification sounds, or or those two things. So I need to go through this again because I noticed I've got a lot of things that should be muted that aren't. So that's good, and it's especially good for me because when I'm doing podcasting, I don't want things beeping and dinging and whatnot. So.
We've been having long conversations with our kids about this too. Like, that they're like, well, I can have my phone in my room. And it's like, you can, but are you muting it overnight? And they're like, well, no, I have to use it as an alarm. And it's like, okay, so what you're doing is just keeping yourself awake, listening to the notifications ding and going to check the phone. Right. So that's not happening. Yeah. So this kind of thing would be good for that. Yeah. Yes. There's a way to mute notifications while still getting your alarm. Like the manufacturers of the phones know that people need to have their phones be their alarm. So yeah, no, that's good. All right. So I guess that'll do it for us this time. Those are our picks, and that's our discussion. We'd love to hear your feedback on anything we talked about this time. Let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com/technology, or the StarQuest Facebook page, facebook.com/StarQuestMedia. Or send us an email to technology@sqpn.com, or visit the StarQuest Discord community at sqpn.com/Discord. You'll find links from our discussion and our picks of the week on our show notes at starquest.fm/TEC273, Tech273.
Remember to like each episode of Secrets of Tech on Facebook, retweet them on X, where we're at SQPN. Leave us comments wherever you find us online. And until next time, Thomas Sanjurjo, thank you for joining me in sharing the secrets of technology.
It's been a pleasure.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Technology on StarQuest. Join a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to go on pilgrimage to the mysterious shrines and sites of Italy in the Jubilee year 2025 with Jimmy Aiken and me, Dom Bettinelli. Go with us on a 12-day, all-inclusive tour that gives you incredible access to Jimmy's insights in Rome, Assisi, Orvieto, Monte Cassino, San Giovanni Rotondo, the Grotto of St. Michael, and more. We're also planning special activities like recording on location for future episodes of Mysterious World and an in-person Weird Questions episode just for pilgrims. Space is limited and filling up, so be sure to find out more. Visit mysterious.fm/Italy 2025 to reserve your spot today. That's mysterious.fm/Italy 2025.